never surrender your voice and your vision in your own work, because the world will try to take it away from you or convince you it's wrong or stupid or it won't resonate. Every day of your life, there's a version coming at you like, no, don't do it like that. And if you think about it, it's all you've got that's really yours, that comes from the inside out. And so you really are the only person on the planet who can give it form. I don't mean it as a never surrender work right. I mean, don't give it away. Don't give your most beautiful self-made vision and expression to people who have no idea why you wanted to make it in the first place. Like, insist on it. Insist on the vision part, and don't surrender it.
Hey everyone, this is your host Yoshino, and welcome to Artist Decoded. This is a very special conversation that I had with writer Lidia Yuknavitch. I felt like this conversation was a long time in the making. Energetically and rhythmically, I felt very connected to Lydia's creative spirit in this conversation. I read a few books of hers in preparation for this episode as well, including her newest book, Thrust, which just came out last week through Riverhead Books. As stated in an article in the New York Times by journalist Katie Dwyer, the book follows Laisve, a young time traveler from the near future, as she escapes the sunken police state formerly known as New York City, and swims into the past and the future. In each time period, she encounters figures from society's margins: a floating boy in a juvenile detention center, the social worker assigned to his case, a 19th century sex worker carrying an epistolary romance with her cousin, the immigrant workers tasked with erecting the Statue of Liberty, and in the very last section, children trapped in cages at the border. Turtles, worms, and whales talk. The narrative is sweeping, non-linear, and at times disorienting. While writing, she said, she focused on the question, if history swung around the edges and captured the point of view of people around the edges, how would that shift the story? In this episode, we talk about those edges, the edges that define the center, as Lydia would put it. And I just loved reading Thrust and finding threads between it and the other books that I've read of hers. Her brilliance in storytelling shines throughout all of her books. And aside from Thrust, Lydia is also known for writing the books The Book of Joan, which is a personal favorite of mine that everyone should check out, The Small Backs of Children, Dora, a Headcase, Verge, The Misfit's Manifesto, and a memoir entitled The Chronology of Water, which is slated to be filmed later this year with first-time director and actor Kristen Stewart. Lydia also runs a writing center in Portland, Oregon called Corporeal Writing. She has an online workshop coming up that I'm going to be personally attending on July 17th called Literary Speculative Fiction. If you'd like more information on that, go to the website, corporealwriting.com. All right, so before we begin, make sure to leave us a review on iTunes and or Spotify. And if you'd like to donate to this independently operated podcast, please go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/artistdecoded. All right, everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Here's my conversation with the wonderful and brilliant Lidia Yuknavitch. Hope you enjoy it. All right, Lydia, thanks. Seriously, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, no, seriously. So the way that I found out about your work actually was originally from the Book of Joan. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends, they're in this band called Vows. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yes, I am.
And, okay. And yeah, so they were telling me about your book, the Book of Joan, and I picked it up. And this was back in 2018 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been 19. And so that's how I originally found out about your work. And then my friend, I don't know if you're familiar with his work. His name's Jesse Draxler.
Maybe, not sure.
He's a visual artist, and he gave me your book, The Misfits Manifesto.
Oh, yes, I am. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so he gave me, well, actually, he let me borrow it, and I just never gave it back. So sorry, Jesse.
Oh, you scoundrel.
I'm a scoundrel. So, as a misfit would, I suppose. And so to get prepared for this interview, I read the Misfits Manifesto, and then I read Thrust in that order, and then I reread the Book of Joan.
Gotcha.
And but to go into it, I pulled this quote from the Book of Joan, and I really, really liked it, and I think it's a very defining, I don't know, just a really good statement just in general, so I wanted to read this back to you. One life is all we have, and we live it as we believe in living it. But to sacrifice what you are and to live without belief, that is a fate more terrible than dying. And I thought that was such a profound little tidbit, a little quote. And I think that, this life as an artist, so just to give you a bit of background, but I've been a professional artist since college, so since I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
And now, to give you context, I'm 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, the artist's life is so challenging. David Lynch talks about it, the art life, as he would put it.
Yeah.
And I guess, to kind of go into it, but, it takes, as you would know, it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy to write a novel. And from your perspective, I was wondering, what does it take to write a book? And really, what do you think it takes? Is it grit? What is it?
Well, that quote kind of feeds into what I would say it takes, which is a sort of belief that expression in the world or making art has some use value, right? And a lot of artists, not all artists, you can tell me if you agree with this or not, but a lot of artists find themselves in this sort of outsider or spit out position or misfit position. And that can leave you feeling entirely alienated, right? Like there's nothingness or nothing to believe in. But what people who discover making art find is that there is something very deep to believe in, and that's the sort of passionate, ecstatic, crazy-making process of self-expression and like making this imperfect bridge to the world with our art making. And in that process, which I would say takes grit.
Yes.
Grit is a great word, like dirty, messy, fucked up grit.
Yes, I could agree with that.
And then I would add a dash of just huge stubbornness, like just this stubborn unwillingness to surrender. The best advice I ever got in my life was never surrender. And it's not just for yourself, although it does help keep some of us alive, even though many of our friends don't make it. It doesn't just help you make a way for yourself in the world to make art. It helps legions of people standing just behind your shoulders who don't yet know that they'll be seen and heard, and that there's a whole legion of us weirdos,
totally.
like waiting for them, like, come on, we're here, I promise we're here.
No,
so
yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I'm just kind of agreeing with you that it's grit and an unwillingness to surrender. And then I guess I would add a passionate embrace of misfits who are coming. Like, we're trying to make a path, not just for ourselves, but for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand, even if it's on just a communal level where you're affecting like the surrounding people, the closest people around you, but that sort of energy that you put towards your art emanates out and can inspire other people, And
well, you hope it will. It also pisses some people off, or hater people are like, nah, this is stupid, I hate this. But that's how you know you're alive, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, I completely agree. And I think to this point, when I read the Misfits manifesto, it made me personally feel very seen. And I like that in each chapter you include one of your friends or one of your students or a writer, that you respect, and their story about their Misfits journey.
Right.
And I just really like the content, obviously, but the way that you formatted that book, because then you also talk about your personal experiences and your trauma growing up, and you kind of paint this picture that, we can go to Joseph Campbell and talk about the hero's journey, and you actually give an example of that, I believe, right? In the Misfits manifesto.
Yeah, kind of trash it a little bit.
I know. Well, that's what I'm kind of getting at is this idea of transcendence, right? And it doesn't necessarily work like that. It's never a point of absolute transcendence where you just reach the point of nirvana and then you're this untouchable God deity figure, right? It's
with no theme music accompanies your standard.
I know. Imagine if you just walk through life with a soundtrack.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Is this Taoist sort of I don't know, Tibetan soundtrack, but yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that book really made me at least feel seen, and I highly suggest it to people that feel lost a bit and are on this artistic creative path that perhaps certain people around you might discredit as you being lost and whatever it may be, but at the end of the day, it's your life.
That's right.
So it's like, who fucking cares?
That's right.
But social conditioning is so heavy that, like, social conditioning and just like the obligations, what I would call like secondhand values, that get put on to us from society and examples from peers and things, that I think you really have to dig deep and just kind of like figure out what you're made of in a way. You have to go through the trenches a bit. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's probably what compelled you to use the word grit. And I started talking about messy, dirty, muddy, digging. Yeah. It is a kind of digging, but there's such a profound beauty in the moment when you turn away from the mainstream and this heavy weight you're talking about, which is social expectations and conditioning. And you look down at the ground, at the dirt and worms and mud, which I tend to put in everything I ever write.
I know.
And you start digging, because it's like, well, if the main path isn't for me, maybe I can go under or around or to the side or even blow it up. And turns out there's lots of us there, and you do find other humans.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting that sort of that I guess you can consider it maybe like mind manifestation or something to that extent, of the time and energy that you put into something, how that resonates or potentially can resonate out. And so I was also thinking too, like, so when do you know that an idea is right to build a world around it? Because a lot of the things that you write, I mean, Misfits Manifesto is more so, I guess, creative nonfiction, or I don't really like to I generally don't like to put things in genres because it kind of puts things in a box. Um, but like the Book of Joan and Thrust, they're very much about these worlds that you've created.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, like, how does the idea start from a seed and then sprout into maybe a flower or a tree or something of that nature?
Well, here's where that stubbornness thing comes
Mm-hmm.
in. Because for me, the worlds are the worlds we live in, and I'm agitating to get other people to see it the way I do.
I love that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And so,
of course,
when the art goes out into the world and it's received as a genre, as you're saying, that's not very important to me. So when Thrust and Book of Joan are received as literary speculative fiction, it makes me laugh a little bit because those are so market oriented, and it's the industry making those genres. But for me, I'm like, no, I was just trying to be precise about the present tense. Like,
yeah,
this is as precise as I can get. I'm trying to invent a language for the present tense, and maybe a few people hear me. So back to your question, I'm almost always trying to translate the present tense, which is the only life I have, right? In this, at least in this form.
Yeah.
And I'm often also trying to just agitate so that, I mean, one of my main goals is that if you held a book that I wrote in your hands, did you feel something in your body? Like, if I could get somebody to vibrate a little in their body, that would be success for me. That would be like, okay, see, you're human. You felt something. And that piece of the story, made your body ring like a tuning fork just for a second. And so they're kind of agitator attempts to remind us that we could be human differently than the stories they keep piling on top of us.
Yeah. Well, I definitely so I definitely want to go into that agitation that you incorporate in your books. But just for context for the listeners, how would you describe Thrust?
See, you're laughing because you get it.
Well, I definitely want to go into the agitation part, and but there's a lot to go into.
Yeah.
Basically.
Let's see. I would describe Thrust as an attempt to shake loose some of the foundational myths that we've been told to carry around, the same kinds of conditioning myths you talked about earlier that are too heavy, also oppressive and violently stupid. Thrust is like this attempt to shake loose some of the threads of our most foundational myths about who we are and suggest that we don't have to live the stories we've been told. We might yet tell different stories about who we are. We might make rearrangements in history and time and art and sexuality and love and just tell the story differently. And that's not a theme unlike Book of Joan. I think I was scratching at something similar there. But this one I literally make different strands, different times, different characters, and then I weave the strands around the same idea that there's yet a chance, even for how badly we fucked the world up at this point, to pull the strands apart. There's always the chance. There always was the chance from the beginning, with just plants and animals. When puny humans showed up, there was always a chance. And so that's probably the closest I get to writing a hope story.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you talk about these threads. And I mean, those threads can also be tied into this metaphor that you use a lot within the Book of Joan and Thrust of the umbilical cord. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed that you talk a lot about umbilical cords, for for me that for me, you know, I really dissect some of your books about talking about, yes, the current state of the world, but also just the power of women, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and also subverting this idea of the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually one quote that I took out of Thrust, and do you mind if I read it to you real quick?
No, go
So,
for it.
okay. So, we've made a wrong place for fathers in the world, so they throw their lives at heroisms and braveries and wars and winning and owning and desire poking out of their pants in a way that is desperate. And then they die with a want inside them that is larger than a body. And I just thought that was just so poignant. And
Thank you for noticing that. That sense is a big deal to me because I have a son.
Yeah, can you speak about that a little bit more in terms of that?
I can, although there's a whole cosmology there. One of the reasons umbilical cords show up so obsessively in my writing.
No, I like seeing those things though, because I mean, selfishly, I'm trying to become a writer, so I'm like dissecting your work, and I'm like, oh man, how do you even string these things together? You know, so I'm fascinated.
Okay. The umbilical cord as a metaphor, as you say, or a symbol, or an
Mm-hmm.
objective correlative, if we want to get fancy, um, is privately important to me. I had a daughter who died the day she was born, and that changed my life forever in terms of loss and grief and pain and those kinds
Yeah.
of states you move through for years, actually, many years for me.
Yeah.
But it also rearranged my understanding of storytelling and of life because I was, for example, holding a birthed body and a dead body in my arms in the same moment. So, Western philosophical and religious systems suddenly shattered into a million pieces for me because that's not a Western notion.
Yeah.
That's that birth and death are not on a linear spectrum, you know, with a
Mm-hmm.
beginning and an end, and as you say, transcendence and theme music afterwards.
Yeah.
I experienced them in the same moment, and so that never left me. It left me with a time distortion in my body forever. And so all the stories I told after that had have time distortion in them because as we know from real life physics, time is not linear. We're just
Yeah.
scared to live it as something nonlinear, so we order it as linear.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you see what I mean? It rearranged language, it rearranged sentences, it rearranged stories. I
Of
don't
course.
any longer tell anything with a beginning, middle, and end in that order. Um, and
Yeah.
so the umbilical cord, to track back, is sort of this image that could connect us not just to whoever one mama was or the biological imperative, but what if it was, you know, like a wormhole or a time, you know, the thing that connects us to the cosmos and the planet and plants and animals, which is how I veered off into weirdness in Book of Joan for sure.
Mm. Well, I like that, and then I also like how in your work you talk about, you know, that sort of, well, you okay, so there's two things I want to talk about. So it's essentially this connection to nature, and then there's this point in Thrust where am I pronouncing her name right? Laisve?
Yes, that's beautiful. Although one could pronounce it any number of ways, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
I sort of love that idea.
Mm, me too.
My name has been mispronounced my entire life, so that anyone whose name has complexity to it for historic reasons or cultural reasons or origin reasons, I find that to be metaphoric of how meaning moves around. So I made a name that readers would go, I wonder how you say this on purpose.
Mm. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I like that you pick names that are, well, Laisvė means liberty, right?
Yes.
In Lithuanian, is that correct?
Correct.
And so everything has some sort of, overlying meaning back into the story. But I like how you connect these. There's a point in Thrust where Laisvė is talking to the plants and like the dirt, I believe, and the mycelial networks, and they're like making a social comment or like an ecologically social commentary towards her about how shitty humans are, basically.
Yes, as they do.
Yeah, and I don't know, I found that to be hilarious and poignant at the same time. But I guess what I'm trying to get with that, with this sort of connection is, oh gosh, I had the thread and now I'm losing it. Okay. So this is it. So that sort of like portal that you were talking about, and how, like, how could you forget that, when your daughter passed away, and I guess, I like in your books how you talk about intergenerational trauma, and how the body essentially doesn't lie. Right. And then I was thinking, have you read the book It Didn't Start With You by Mark Woolin? Okay. Yeah. Cause I was, well, I know that you read, I assume you read a lot, but I don't know, when I read that book, and I also had Mark on the podcast, but I don't know, that was just such a profound, a profound book. Cause
Agreed.
Yeah. Cause pain does reside in the body, and I suppose how could it not? Yeah.
Yeah. And I, two things, I'll probably forget what I'm saying mid-sentence, but, there's something that's just bone true to me, which is that each of us are carrying around everything that's ever happened to us in our actual bodies.
Yeah.
And our bodies kind of create languages of expression. So like your chronic backache, or, your insomnia, or your headaches and migraines, or it's like, from my point of view, it's our bodies trying to express, trying to say, hey, I don't mean there's a one-to-one correspondence, but if you stay with the idea for a second, it's like bodies are story carriers. And so one thing to do in life is liberate those stories from individual bodies. But the other thing I'd say is that it's not just individual bodies. It's social groups and intergenerational, families carrying stories and secrets and lies. And then one ripple out from individual and family is whatever community you're part of. And one ripple out from that is the state of things. And another ripple out from that is government or law, or philosophy or religion. And so stories begin to matter in a quite profound way if you think of it that way, and not just, well, these are the stories we've told about who we are. Done.
Yeah.
They become energized. They become, the possibility of war or the possibility of radical change sitting in the same space, or the possibility of hate or love sitting in the same space. And so that's kind of my plug into what you're asking about, is that storytelling is corporeal, and that it might be important for us to start asking different questions about how to tell, how to express the stories, both for ourselves as individuals, but also every community we are a part of.
I like that.
It's not ambitious at all.
I can, yeah, is that right? So that word stood out to me, corporeal. So is that where you came up with the title to your, I believe it's a writing workshop, is that right? Corporeal Writing?
Yeah, it's a writing center. It's kind of a methodology. It's in Portland, Oregon. And yes, that's where it came from. It also came from that same, revelation I had when my daughter died. And that was reinforced when my son was born. And so many years later, he's 21 now.
Wow.
But when he was born, and he came out of me, and I sort of watched his first years. One revelation I had with that was, male and female, men and women and boys and girls are stupid binary terms, and we have to get rid of them.
Yes.
And so back to your question about we've made a wrong world for fathers or for men. I'm equally invested in the ways in which actual bodies in the world right now, and gender fluidity and non-gender binaries and trans people are sort of like the avant-garde of the next story of being, B-E-I-N-G. And so that I've taken pieces of 3 different questions you asked.
No, it's okay. I'm following the thread. I like it.
Okay, conflating them, but
no, I like it.
But so the whole passion behind corporeal writing and the Corporeal Center is not everybody wants to go to grad school or an MFA program, and hardly anyone can afford it. And I've met some people for whom places like MFA programs actually damaged them or made them quit writing for years. And so the Corporeal Center is for misfits or people who need those other paths, those other roads, to sit in a room and participate in a collective writing process where it doesn't matter who you are or what you came in the door with or what you walk out the door with. It just matters that we're all plugging into this creative process collaboratively without the same hierarchies or rules.
Where would someone get more information on corporeal writing?
Online, corporealwriting.com, where you can also get yourself t-shirts, hoodies, and underwear.
I'll take some underwear.
Oh man, you got to listen to me. They're magical. If you wear these underwear, books come out of you.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm so not kidding.
Really?
You got to get these underwear.
All right.
But like a whole bunch of different people run creative labs there. Melissa Phoebos was just there. Therese Myatt is teaching this summer. Okay. It's a whole range of different kinds of voices. And usually the people running the creative labs are very, very, very non-traditional.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps after I'll have to ask you more questions about that because I'm actually personally interested. And so going back into just this idea of the body and going back into your novel Thrust, I really like how you tied in. Well, first of all, I love how you integrate love stories into your narratives. So, for instance, the love of Frederic and
Mm-hmm.
Aurora
Mm-hmm.
in Thrust, and then the love between Joan and Leone.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
how you pronounce her name? Leone.
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and Trinculo and Christine in
Yes.
Book of Joan. And speaking of that love, so I was reading the Misfits Manifesto, and you talk about this obsession that you had with your mother's leg,
Yeah. Yeah.
how it was inches shorter than the other one, but yet how she was able to navigate the world through her real estate business. And she was,
Yeah.
from what I understand, relatively successful with that, and just how it didn't weigh her down. Right.
Right.
And then there's this narrative, and I love reading the letters between Frederic and
Oh,
uh,
thank you for telling me that. I think there was some concern that some people are bored by epistolary segments. I'm like, no, no, they're not.
I loved that. Those personally were my favorite parts because I felt like this.
Oh, that's so good to hear.
Yeah. The love between Frederic and Aurora, and I think like what I'm trying to get at, within those letters, he talks about, this obsession that he has for Aurora's lost limb, her leg, and then
Mm-hmm.
how he was actually a 19th century French sculptor who
Mm-hmm.
created the Statue of Liberty. Um, and so in the story, he creates an appendage for her, like a prosthetic.
Yeah,
And, and so I was wondering if Thrust is in a way dedicated to your mother.
100%.
Hmm.
Um, it's a
Yeah.
lot of other things too. The dedication is actually to my son, so there's
Hmm.
a desire to give to his generation and people younger than him and kind of non-neuronormative people. But
Yeah.
in the creative act, in the heart of the matter, is yes, my love for my mother's leg as an erotic object, even though that creeps some people out. I don't care. It's it's a
I
form of a love letter to her, even though
yeah.
she's not alive, and Aurora is
Hmm.
nothing like my mother. Or maybe she has a little bit of spunk like my mother had, or feistiness.
Yeah.
But my mother never went to college and was not an intellectual person.
Hmm.
And she was from Texas, so there's that.
Okay.
Enough said. I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I was, I watched her disability and how two things,
Hmm.
how the world received her and how grotesque that was,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
how she navigated it anyway,
Yeah.
and how strangely beautiful that was.
Hmm.
And so yeah, you because I'm such a subtle writer.
Well, I like connecting these things all together because I guess. Oh, sorry. Continue. But
Oh no, I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. What you see is absolutely there. And I never found, I guess I can say this out loud. I don't think I ever found the uh, successful way to love her. I mean, I loved her, but we
yeah.
fought. As a matter of fact, if we had not fought when I was an adolescent and young adult, as hard as we did, I'm not sure I would have found my own edges, and I'm not sure I would have figured out how to, bust out into a life and keep fighting. Um, but if I could give her some more tender forms of love, I would, and I can't. So sometimes I make characters instead.
Hmm. Well, I don't know. I think this was in the Book of Joan, but I have this written down here. And you said, referencing the edges, you said the edges of everything are always shimmering.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess metaphorically speaking, I was just thinking about that in terms of this, the Misfits Manifesto and
Yeah.
and outsiders, and
Yeah.
like, I mean, I'll just speak from my perspective personally, but there's definitely times when you're doing the artistic process and you're just like, man, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like you're just kind of second guessing yourself. And then, so it's like this kind of these ebbs and flows, and hopefully they aren't crazy hills and valleys of emotional depression and whatnot. But for me, it's more of like an ebb and flow and then trying to find your way. But I think the community aspect really helps, in the way that, actually I have the Misfits Manifesto here. Do you mind if I just read another one of your quotes?
Go for it.
I hate to keep on just quoting you back, but I did pull some quotes. So, let's see. Oh no, I don't know where it is. But anyways, I guess the point is the edges shimmering.
Yeah, let me. That really brings me to something. So no one knows this, but I obsessively draw circles, kind of like doodle circles, and it sort of looks like they're all different shapes, and some of them are lopsided, and they all cluster together, sort of like a pile of rocks or cells would. And I've been doing that drawing since I was 4. And I'm positive it's a coping mechanism for trauma, but like I never stopped. So I still do it. And it's helped me through a lot of the times where, as an artist, or, just sitting in an academic committee meeting, it helped me not kill myself for 30 years. All my notes have these obsessive little cell clusters or circles on them. And a thing about the Misfits Manifesto that was so beautiful listening to everybody else's stories is that all the times each of us felt that feeling you're talking about, where you're on an edge and you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? It's so beautiful to try and remember that you're not going to fall off the edge of the world, because the world isn't flat. Thank the universe, somebody figured out the world is round.
You're not a flat
circle. No, it's a circle, which means you're not going to fall off into oblivion. You're going to travel the fucking circle. Totally. And the thing about being on the edge is, another beautiful thing is that those of us on the outside, or the edges, are what give any form its shape. So the center wouldn't even have a shape if those of us on the edges weren't holding the line. It would be amoebic. They wouldn't have a mainstream. They wouldn't have a center. They wouldn't be the happy, whole people who supposedly, live the lives. The center needs its edges, or we got nothing. We have shapelessness. We have chaos. We have nothing. So those kinds of ideas help me, just the image of a circle, that the world is round, that the edges create shape and form from chaos. And so everybody else should just be getting on their knees and thanking us. I'm waiting. I'm hopeful.
Me too. I'm hopeful as well. There's just speaking of a circle, I was just thinking about are you familiar with an Enzo circle?
Yeah,
just this sort of symbol of togetherness, and which is derived from Zen Buddhism, and I don't know, it just popped into my head when you were talking about circles.
So I have a whole collection of images from the globe that repeat this notion, and I'm not lying when I say it's kept me alive to return to it in meditative, deep meditative practice on form, that form I'm really glad you mentioned that. That's it.
Hmm. Do you I also know that you paint too. Is that correct?
I do, but not that anyone else will see.
Just for yourself, right?
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
very moving to me.
Yeah.
Color is a big deal to me. Abstract forms are a big deal to me. Just bringing something you think or feel to form on a canvas is very healing for me, very physical. I have a lot of trouble with disassociation and not quite feeling my body, particularly my legs.
Hmm.
And it's a little better than it was when I was younger, but it's still there. And so, for some reason, painting, because I paint on big canvases, and so you have to kind of walk up to them, and the painting is physical. For some reason, it helps me feel my legs and my body.
Hmm.
And so, thank oceans, nobody's looking at them.
But oh, sorry, go on.
No. I'm okay with writing being in the world, but those are just, I also love photography. I obsessively take photos, but I'm not like a professional in any way, shape, or form. But that's soothing to me too.
Yeah. So this disassociation that you're talking about, do you feel reassociated when so you speak a lot about this connection with water
Mm-hmm.
and the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
and when so you were like a semi-professional swimmer, is that correct?
Yeah, I was a little badass for a little while.
A little badass. And then you turn your badassery into novels.
Yeah, well, you do get older.
But I guess like what I'm trying to get at is like that, I guess reassociation or whatever to call it. But do you feel more in touch with your body when you're in the water?
Oh my God, that is, I mean, I don't know what to do with your sentence, but it needs to be amplified by, 10 million.
Mm.
Being in water is the only time I can feel my whole body, period. Um,
Mm.
Also, it's the
Yeah.
only time I feel comfortable and pain free and just free. Because when I'm in the water, it doesn't matter uh, if I'm beautiful or not, or pretty or fat or old, or none of those things matter. You're just a body in water. And for
Mm.
me, that state of being releases me from the tyrannies in the world you described earlier about who we're supposed to be and why, and and as
Yeah.
a person, you mentioned your age, so I'm going to be 59 this summer. As a 59-year-old woman, and again, I
Yeah.
think we need new words. That word is becoming stupid. But as a 59-year-old human of the female variety,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
um, oh man, the load of shit I'm supposed to carry around from my culture about being a 59-year-old woman. I'm supposed to go in a hole apparently and just like bury myself from the neck down. There's no way I'm going to carry those stories. They're stupid. They're fucked up. I have no.
Yeah.
There's not anything about my life that corresponds to the stories I'm supposed to carry.
Yeah.
So when I'm in water, I'm free from all of it. Also, you know how it fills your nose and your ears, and it
Mhm.
kind of, you really do feel like you're in a different world.
Yeah.
And I understand that for some people that's terrifying, but they probably have some other way to feel whole and more free, and water's just mine.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome that you have that, because I think like being in touch with the physicality of the body is a very important thing, even if it's just going on a walk and stretching and, doing those things. I think exercise can really, something that I say a lot to some of my friends, because I'm like an athlete. I've been an athlete pretty much my whole life, but is what do I say? I can't remember what I said now. Essentially, fuck, I lost it. I'm sorry.
Well, you were talking about physicality and being an athlete, and whatever it was you were going toward, I definitely identify with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't have the trauma response where my whole, my legs or my body go numb sometimes, I would still be an athlete because there's oldie athletes.
Yeah.
And even in the pool, if I'm doing my kind of meditative Zen swimming, and a 15-year-old is in the lane next to me going fast, I will beat them. It's like my athlete Lydia kicks in, and I will like kick their ass.
I could see that. Yeah.
And then like I can't lift my arms to drive home because I did that.
Oh. The ego gets to you.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Totally. It's like it comes out like an animal. Like I'm all Zen, I'm swimming, I'm Zen. Motherfucker.
Yeah. I get the same thing when I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh my God.
For years.
Yeah, yeah.
I basically had to stop because I tore my meniscus in 2019.
Oh man.
But I'm fine now. I do like lots of prehab and stuff like that. But when I'm running on the street and I see someone, and then I don't know, I look at my watch and I'm like, man, I just ran like a minute per mile, or what, like a minute, basically much quicker because I'm trying to pass this person or something.
Totally.
It's so stupid. And then I don't really recognize it. It's not like a conscious thing, but I'm like, it's just like this sort of like animalistic pride thing. I don't know.
Totally. I don't. It's. Yeah. I mean, it is. I think it is our animals coming out, but also if you have been an athlete, you code something in your own body about, like, hey, I exist. I'm alive. I won something or I did something and I felt alive. And so partly that's a form of hubris and the, winning and some things that are sort of unfortunate. But the other side of that story is that it makes you feel alive and not dead. And so much of life is just deadening. And, I think it's okay to feel that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think there's a certain level of healthiness with that competitive spirit, as long as you're not consistently damaging yourself or hurting other people. Right?
Yeah, that piece is key.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did want to ask, actually, going back to just this gender binary discussion, I like how you string those ideas into your books. And then also something that I've been thinking about when I was reading your books is just how, and I'm not sure the exact history of it, but I believe that the gender binary sort of discussion was more activated by colonization. Is that correct? Because in certain cultures, being intersex, for instance, is actually seen to be almost like a more highly regarded person, right?
Yes, and yes.
And and I believe in certain Aboriginal tribes, for instance, that someone that is intersex is actually could potentially be like a shaman, for instance, right?
Yes, correct? And
you probably have done more research on that than I have, but I'm curious what your perspective is on that.
Well, there's, you're correct in tracking the history back to colonization impulses and deeply violent and oppressive impulses to other indigenous cultures, for example. Because it doesn't take me or any other person trying to sound or be smarty to recognize that releasing existence from the biological binary of male and female is dangerous to cultures with power.
For sure.
And we're seeing that enacted on a daily basis. It's always been enacted on the bodies of queer people and non-gender binary people, or three-spirit people, or any culture you want to study. It's always from the point of view of the dominant power group or system. That's a dangerous being because it interrupts, among other things, the kind of reproductive imperative of man-woman, or the rules around reproduction in some cultures around man-woman. And the second you interrupt, humans are here to breed, you interrupt male being powerful and female being breeder, you interrupt the power of the church, you interrupt the power of the state. And so that we treat sexuality and sexual orientation as if it's this limited category of scientific study or of, religious rules and mores, is a testament to the formidable and radical power sexuality might have if it was released from those horrifically oppressive and brutal, binaries and systems. I'm sorry. It's like I sound like Lydia, who also has a PhD lady, and I don't mean to.
No. I don't think. No, I mean, I think this is incredibly fascinating.
I get really worked up about it because I'm so sure about it. I'm going to go to my grave like ranting and raving about this.
What? No, that's great. What books would you recommend for people that want to learn more about this specific topic?
Well, I mean, you can sort of go historical, and Judith Butler was saying it in every word she wrote. And why more people aren't aware of that, I have no idea. But that's a little old school, and what I would encourage people today to have a look at are exactly the writing coming out of gender fluid and queer writers in terms of poetry, graphic novels, hybrid pieces of writing. Denez Smith is phenomenally brilliant, but we could create a whole reading list for people. The key term to look for, though, is who is writing about gender and sexuality and sexual orientation in terms of changing the story. And if you can find those books, you'll be a happy camper.
Are there any? I mean, I know you just you just named a couple of people, but are there any books in particular that like really helped you on your journey?
Well, I don't think it would help anybody else because the books I read as, Lydia in my life kind of made a certain configuration around my sexuality and my gender understandings. And so I don't think books work like that. I think, like you find the art or the music or the books that you need in your life based on, the energy impulses you're shooting out into the world.
Sure.
And what comes back to you is kind of your own private art canon, your own private, it comes back to you in relation to the questioning you put out. And also I was influenced by films more than I was books. So that's just a confession.
Which films?
Oh, David Lynch, and because it's up for me right now, Cronenberg.
Which Cronenberg films?
Oh, Existence. Changed my life. Totally changed my life.
Oh God, that film is I mean, all Cronenberg films are pretty
I
terrifying.
know. Oh, wait till you see the new one.
What's a new one?
Oh, fuck, now I'm forgetting the name of it. But Kristen Stewart's in it and Viggo Mortensen. And at cons, people were walking out of the preview. I'm like, this is for me. This movie's made for me. But I'm also... You've got... I'm spacing the title of it. Literally.
I'm looking it up right now. So
you'll find it. It's like now. It's of the now.
Is it Crimes of the Future?
Yes. Viggo Mortensen plays a performance artist, and all I'll say is that he dabbles in self-surgery.
Oh. Neon just knows how to pick their films. I mean, did you watch Titane?
I loved it. I think I lost some friends because I loved it so much. I'm not kidding. I lost some.
What do you mean?
There were women friends who were like, I can't do that. That's terrible. I'm like, this is the best thing. But I'm also
so good.
I know. It was incredible. I loved it. But I'm also like a Jane Campion junkie. Even though she messes up and says the wrong things sometimes. I just mean in terms of my formative experiences, I saw everything she made like 30 times. Oh, and yeah. Blade Runner. Blade Runner is part of the reason I became a writer. I must have seen it 200 times.
Did you? I'm sure you read Philip K. Dick's book.
Oh yeah. Love. Right. I think I've read everything he wrote.
Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, that's interesting. I could see that you would like Cronenberg. I really like Cronenberg. I really like Lynch. I actually noticed, I don't know if this is like a new book that he wrote, David Cronenberg, but he has a book out. I was at the bookstore the other day and I was like, I didn't know David Cronenberg has a book. Have you read that?
I think it's recent. I haven't read it yet, but I will probably get it.
Yeah. Recently I watched Dead Ringers. And oh my God. I was just like, what is this movie about? It's just it's so grotesque. And
it is, but that's the territory as an artist that he explores for us and gives expression to. And so for me, those forms of expression are as glorious as, all the other forms of movies that make us feel satiated or cozy or snuggly or happy. Like, we need the whole lot. We need all of it.
I agree.
But yeah, Dead Ringers is fucked up.
Yeah. That's a special kind of fucked up for sure. Have you seen any of Brandon Cronenberg's films? His son, Possessor?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah.
Well,
Possessor is amazing. You should
really?
Watch that. Seriously, okay. I think you would really like Possessor. That's another special kind of fucked up movie.
Okay, I will definitely watch it.
Yeah. Speaking of just other artworks, I've heard you reference that Frankenstein is one of like your favorite novels. Is that correct?
It's not one of them. It is the favorite novel.
Okay, so I'm curious, which version do you like? Because I while doing research for this episode, for this interview, I was like, oh man, like I really want to read Frankenstein. But which version do you suggest? The 1818 version, or I guess the second version?
All of them, yes.
All of them. Okay. All right. All of them. Okay, cool.
Also, all of her letters. Also, her mother, her books. So when I'm all in on Mary Shelley. So you asked a question that has never-ending answers. Her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, and who's considered to be the mother of modern feminism.
Wow.
So, and there's lots of death. There's lots of children who die and mothers who die in childbirth. And so you can see how I gravitate that direction. But yeah, Frankenstein, I tell people that all the time, and then they go read it and they're like, meh.
Well, I mean,
That's what I mean, though. It doesn't matter if anyone else thinks it's a perfect book. It matters that, what I brought to it. See, it's what we bring to books that keeps literature alive. It's not that there's the best book ever written for everyone. It's that, the ones that activate you in your life, those are the books.
of course. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's why I think it behooves us to just be able to shape that perspective ourselves instead of just regurgitate things that other people like.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole slew of people that don't like Tane and don't see the metaphorical sort of like the meaning behind it, right? But for those that do, they really do, and they really like Tane. So, but specifically about Frankenstein, what exactly, what do you like the most about it, I guess?
The monster. And the outcast nature of the monster, and the glorious moment in the story where this identified monstrous grotesque turns around and speaks back and is eloquent and beautiful and identifies what it is humans have hypocritically created and then blamed others for. We make our monsters and then we kill them for it, is a piece of it. And then I also love that there's epistolary form in it. There's letters. As you know, I'm a little obsessed with that.
No, I like that. Yeah.
And I love that an 18-year-old girl wrote the story while she was doing opium with, Byron and Shelley in a mansion, in a villa. I mean, what's not to love about that? That's and she sort of kicked their asses, which cracks me up.
What do you mean, like physically, or?
Well, there was a dare that they were bored on a stormy night. It really was a stormy night, and they got bored. So Byron gave them a challenge to write ghost stories, and she fucking kicked ass. She won.
Interesting.
Oh, you're going to have to do homework tonight. I'm going to send you a reading list and a film list.
Okay. I mean, I love just diving in. So feel free to throw it all at me. I'm a consumer of as much knowledge as I can get into this tiny little brain of mine. Did you see the Mary Shelley series, which I believe has Elle Fanning in it?
Yeah, I did. I see anything that is even remotely connected, and I think moments have been captured representationally that are kind of cool and interesting. I don't think anybody's. Of course, I don't. I don't think anybody's nailed it yet.
Mm-mm. Have you, just speaking about other authors, and I recently watched this, have you seen Shirley?
Yes.
What'd you think about that?
I loved it. I probably also lost some friends on that one. the scene where she's, let's see, I don't want to give it on the couch and there's wine.
Oh, yeah.
I stood up in front of the TV and clapped.
Yeah, that was an awesome scene.
Plus, she's such a fascinating actress because of her stuff in real life. So I'm fascinated. Elizabeth Moss, is that her name?
Yeah, Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah. She's complex.
She definitely is. Yeah, she definitely is. Yeah, I really liked her in The Handmaid's Tale, but I just love Margaret Atwood just in general. So I did have just a couple of technical writing questions. So in the acknowledgement section in Thrust, you talk about how your partner Andy, how he gave you this idea, I believe, for this whiteboard technique. What is that exactly? What is that?
It was definitely an opportunity for argumentation in the household.
Okay.
Because he
Okay.
wanted, he suggested I chart out ideas on a big old whiteboard, which is so crass to me because I am the agitator artist with the chaotic process and I have dream
Mm-hmm.
visions. And so, like,
Mm.
outlines and whiteboard charting and lists are like beneath me, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I had made, for anybody who reads Thrust, you have to imagine a state before the book state where it was in such extreme chaos and locked inside Lydia's dream vision that it was almost unreadable. But like I could read it, but no one on the planet would have been able to. And
Mm.
so I fought him the whole way, but what worked was I made kind of like a bubble chart, if you've ever heard of those,
Mm-hmm.
where you make big circles. There's the circles again, and you put important themes or character stuff in the bubbles, and then you sort of see how the bubbles relate to each other. And
Hmm.
and even though I'm still angry with him for being so right, um,
Uh-huh.
it worked. It helped me see through the big, beautiful mess I'd made
Yeah.
to find form. And I promise you, if he hadn't helped me through that part of the process, we'd probably still be in big, beautiful chaos mess. Because that's, I'm
Creating
serious.
chaos magic.
Yeah, actually, that's my preferred state. I have two favorite states. One of them is being in water, and the other one is being inside art when it's in the messy process part. And if there weren't good reasons to come out, I never would.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super inspiring, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just interesting how, like, there's certain things that we can do to kind of almost trick the brain
Yeah.
in ways, like,
Yeah.
or to contextualize ideas and then to like map it out, or to like
Yes.
not, or to not do that at all and just say,
Totally.
like, forget that. I'm not going to do that. Or oscillating between the two,
Absolutely. That's it. That's it. Like, I'm a person who hates maps, but
Yeah.
I love maps as objects. And so I think he cleverly figured out that if he could show me it was map making and it was cool as an object to make these maps, he like tricked me, like you're saying. And I'm like, okay.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But first I had to fight him.
Yeah, I understand that. Um, and then so like in in Thrust and in the Book of Joan, I mean, you have so much research, and I'm just curious, like, what that process is like. Maybe let's speak specifically about Thrust. I mean, you're kind of like this, like you're like an archaeologist or like some sort of like
Yeah.
pseudobiologist or something. I'm curious, like, what that process of research is like for you.
I think it's me trying to be those things. That resonated when you said that. I love searching for artifacts,
Hmm.
and I love that history exists, but not really the way it's been presented to us and locked in. I love the idea that the truer, more vital histories are hiding underneath the cover stories of dominant narratives,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that it's our job the rest of our lives to go find them and help amplify them, or just get jerks the fuck out of the way or whatever. Like clear out the crap. If that's,
Yeah.
it feels something like that, like I'm, yeah, like excavating or like an archaeological dig. Also, apparently I missed my calling. I'm pretty sure I should have been something more like a librarian or some researcher alone in a room in the basement of the Smithsonian, or like
It
I
seems like you
like
found your
it.
calling.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can. I mean, I can tell. I mean, you do heavy amounts of research. And speaking about, just like getting the jerks out of the way, I love the character in the Book of Joan of Jean de Men. And then I just thought like, oh, this is like, makes sense. I think the book came out in 2017.
Yep.
We can draw certain political metaphors from that.
Yep.
And then now that you say that you like Cronenberg and I don't want to give the book away, but just tying in those two, I'm just like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This makes sense. But okay, so let's see. I guess I just have one more question for now. And for this podcast episode, I have many questions I could ask. But what is your advice, if you have any, for artists and creatives?
Well, that thing I spoke to earlier, the importance to never surrender. What I mean by that is you never surrender your voice and your vision in your own work, because the world will try to take it away from you or convince you it's wrong or stupid, or it won't resonate. Every day of your life, there's a version coming at you like, no, don't do it like that. And if you think about it, it's all you've got that's really yours, that comes from the inside out. And so you really are the only person on the planet who can give it form. So that never surrender isn't just like a pirate cry, although I probably shouldn't use the word pirate right now because it just connects to the depthster. But, I don't mean it as a never surrender work cry. I mean, don't give it away. Don't give your most beautiful self-made vision and expression to people who have no idea why you wanted to make it in the first place. Like, insist on it. Insist on the vision part, and don't surrender it.
I feel like this is a good place to restate. I mean, speaking of the circle, the circles that you continue to make, to restate that quote from the beginning. Do you mind if I say it?
Go for it.
One life is all we have, and we live it as we believe in living it. But to sacrifice what you are and to live without belief, that is a fate more terrible than dying. From the Book of Joan. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate you for taking the time to do this.
I feel nothing but gratitude. I love talking to you. Thank you so much.
Bit, aka Justin Dosher Hopkins. YouTube and creative support is by Tyler Scully. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.